Hello again, and welcome to stage 5 of the 7-stage process, questions and exercises relating to Bob and Jane's future housing needs. At each stage, and for each building block of need, the workbook provides questions and exercises for Bob and Jane to complete and reflect on, encouraging them to keep their minds open, curious, and exploratory as they develop their options. So let's have a look at some of the questions they can ask themselves relating to their future housing needs. Number one, well, the first question, not necessarily in this order, of course, how can we achieve a fair outcome regarding our future housing needs in all the circumstances, fair in both our views as well as in law, applying the legal principles and our shared and individual priorities? Second question, how important is it for the children, that relates to the children building blocks of needs, to remain in that family home? And if so, until when? And what about this one? How important is it for each of us to be in a similar sized property over the next few years? And the next, how will our disposable incomes less expenditure, compare when we look at our housing options, and how will this impact on the standard of living for each of us? How important is it for this to be similar for both of us? Would an unequal division of the property equity in one of our favours justify some offsetting of the pensions in the other person's favour in these circumstances? You'll see that all these bricks I refer to, building blocks, children, income, and retirement. The whole thing is integrated, of course. We're talking about housing at the moment, but it was all connected with, for example, the children building block of need, the income building block of need, and the retirement building block of need. And there may well be other questions. What other questions can we ask ourselves to ensure that we are keeping our minds as open and as creative as possible regarding our housing options? Good question. As Bob and Jane complete the exercise and read the reflective questions in this part of their workbooks, they will develop their thinking, well, that's the idea, and their housing options based on their own priorities. But when they come to mediation and start working together, it will be crucial for them to be able to test their assumptions, think about their thinking, in other words, reflecting and expanding their thinking together, developing options and finding a solution which works for both of them and their children, shifting into a collective thinking and problem-solving mindset and approach. The workbook, my workbook, and these questions, and indeed the other parts of the workbook, prepare Bob and Jane for this approach. Continuing asking questions is crucial to this creative process, both in the preparation stages and during the mediation sessions themselves. So let me turn to stage 6, generating the all-important options and the support the workbook provides. Stage 6, housing options. So using their workbooks, as they prepare for mediation, Bob and Jane have now each created the following housing options, ready to discuss in mediation, having applied the relevant principles, that was stage 2 of the process, remember, and their priorities, stage 3, to the factors in their situation, that was stage 4, using the questions I've just covered, that was stage 5. To help Bob and Jane even further to create some housing options, the workbook also provides some alternative future housing options to think about, helping them to explore their thinking and creative solutions. They may include, for example, an immediate sale of the family home or a deferred sale on an agreed future date, which triggers the sale. So some triggering events for a deferred sale. What about transferring the family home from one of them to the other, or a buyout option with one person buying out the other's interest, or indeed renting, or a combination of these, and so on. There are many options available. The key message for Jane and Bob at this stage is to develop and record their preferred options using the workbook to show their reasoning, whilst maintaining an open mind ready for mediation, accepting that at this stage there may well be scenarios they've not yet thought about, quite likely actually, having not yet engaged in that collective option generation process I've mentioned already, together in mediation. So let's look at what they've come up with on this slide if you haven't already read it. with their current thinking and approach. So option one, and I call them option one and two because I didn't want to polarize it into Jane's option and Bob's option. So option one, they both come up with when they combine their workbooks, is the family home to be transferred to Jane with the existing mortgage. Jane uses her borrowing capacity, which remember is quite significant, to extend her current mortgage on the home to £500,000 to buy out Bob's half interest, paying him £300,000 and releasing him from the mortgage of the family home. So he's now free to buy his own property. He's got £300,000, which he uses from Jane, together with a mortgage of £100,000 using his borrowing capacity. Remembering his borrowing capacity was about 100 to 120,000 to buy a property for approximately 400,000, giving him a similar equity, but not the same size property as Jane, but a similar equity in the property. If Jane retains her rental property, remember that's a non-matrimonial property, but if she does retain that, she would have £100,000 more equity. If she sells it, she could reduce her significant mortgage, 500,000, or benefit from the net rental income to help pay her mortgage payments if she retains it. And that's option one. Option two is Jane and Bob sell the family home, divide the sale proceeds and other assets that they've got to buy two similar bedroom properties, dividing pensions to achieve parity of pension benefits and income on retirement at age 60 and achieve a clean break. Jane, in this option, Jane believes that an equal division of the net proceeds of sale and the savings, you remember, I think they're about 50,000, and the pensions would be reasonable, but not including her rental property, which he wants to keep. Bob believes that he will need more of the sale proceeds to buy a similar property to Jane from all the capital available, in view of their different incomes and borrowing capacity. He believes that Jane should borrow a bit more than him, and he should have a bit more capital if Jane wants a clean break and no spousal maintenance. So that's them getting going with their options. Remembering, of course, they're going to have to come into mediation and explore these options and develop and expand further. So which option, by the way, and what approach do you think they'll be more drawn to based on the priorities that we know about them at the moment, their priorities which we've discussed, and the factors in their case? I'll leave that question for you at the moment. Moving on to the next stage 7, the support part of the workbook, the support stage. Now, throughout this webinar, I've referred to my divorce manual, the guides and financial experts available to support Bob and Jane, and so on. All these, together with my workbook, form the support scaffolding that we provide at Compass Resolution and wrap around our clients, and which I refer to as our integrated mediation team and resources approach. Remember that the aim is for Bob and Jane to use their workbooks to keep track of their thinking and approach, putting it all together at the end of the workbook to create options covering all 4 of the building blocks of need, housing, income, children, retirement, to bring to mediation for further discussion. So jumping forward, having now completed their workbooks, let's look at the options they've created for the 4 building blocks, and I'll have a break here. Thanks for watching, stay with me, and see you soon.